Growing up, I went to this sleepaway camp in the Adirondack Mountains, and this particular summer camp can be extremely dangerous and nobody ever warns you. It's up in those Adirondack Mountains way in upstate New York. On paper, it's one of the most beautiful places that you could ever send your kid. But there are stories buried deep in those woods, unexplained stories that would cause any parent to never send their child there again. People will tell you about the fresh mountain air and the quiet lakes and the traditions that make it feel like home, but they always leave out the rumors about the things that stalk campers from just outside of the tree line. They also conveniently forget to mention the campers that vanished without a trace, the kids that were quietly erased from the yearbooks. There's something very wrong with that forest, and I didn't realize until my third summer there. I'm gonna tell you 3 stories from 3 separate summers that I spent there. And each one of these stories gets progressively creepier, so make sure you stay until the end. These stories have always felt connected to me, but I can't put a finger on why. So if you see any connections, please let me know in the comments so I don't feel crazy. So the first time I went to this sleepaway camp was when I was about 8 or 9, and I think it was 2009. And I had no idea what to expect when I arrived there. I'd never been to anything quite like that, and I'd never been away from home for that long of a period. And let me tell you something, and let me be very, very clear. It turns out that sleepaway summer camps are the best thing ever. Like, I had never experienced something so overwhelmingly fun, such a positive experience in my life. It was like the first time that I had felt like real childhood bliss. Not that my childhood was bad by any means, or I didn't have friends, or I didn't have fun. There was something special about being shipped off into the middle of the woods with a lake and all of these activities going on with all of these kids your age with 0 responsibilities for literally a month. So let me paint this picture for you just so you understand where my mind state was at. And I know my mind state was at an 8-year-old child, but it's very important for you to understand what that moment in my life felt like for the rest of the story to make sense. When you first get there, there's this feeling out period. You're trying to make new friends. It's a slightly uncomfortable environment, but you get through the first week, everybody starts to get comfortable with each other. You get used to the camp daily routine. You guys have a bunch of competitions and excursions and activities. Everybody starts bonding. And then the second week passes and you start to hit the peak of this trip. You have your best friends locked in. You've had some of the best experiences of your life, and you're right in the middle of this long month. You're fully warmed up to your environment, you're having the best time of your life, and you know that you have 2 weeks left of it. And there's something so special about that middle section, where you've been there for 2 weeks and you know you have another 2 weeks. It's this level of freedom that you can't feel anywhere else. I imagine some people feel it when they're studying abroad or something. Not even studying abroad, but traveling abroad, and nobody knows what country they're in, and they're just like, I'm traveling for the next 2 months, and I've already been out here for 2. So I could go on and on about all of the activities that we did, from pottery to archery to kayaking to fishing. They pack so much into one summer, but for this story, I'm gonna focus on where the real core memories are made. After all of the fun and games during the day, you and now your new best friends are all bunked up in one cabin, 8 kids and 1 counselor. And those nights, those are the core memories. We're all kind of overly tired. We just had a big dinner. We have to go to sleep pretty soon, but we're all just so happy to be there with each other, laughing, joking, living in pure bliss. We're all trying to stay up longer than we're supposed to past the bedtime, but we're just young kids. We don't know how overtired we are. Plus, the counselor has to sleep in here with us. He's enforcing bedtime. And you're so excited for the activities the next day that you finally oblige and everybody gets to sleep. But there's one thing that you have to get used to when you're living on a campsite. And that one major difference is how different going to the bathroom in the middle of the night is. When you're at home, you roll out of bed, you waddle over to your toilet, you don't even have to turn on a light, you barely have to open your eyes, and you could waddle back to bed completely unscathed. But when you're staying in a cabin in the middle of the woods and you're 8, 9 years old and there's no bathroom in the cabin, things change significantly. And not only does it change for you, but it changes for your potential bathroom buddy. Because the rules are, you can't go by yourself. There's an outhouse in a different building outside of your cabin, and we're surrounded by woods. There could potentially be a bear walking through the campsite in the middle of the night. There could be a mountain lion prowling around. Young kids are not allowed to be out after dark unattended. So there's a bathroom buddy system, and you always have to be monitored by one of the counselors. So one night, I'm dead asleep, I'm exhausted from all the water sports we played the day before, when I feel my arm get shaken and somebody's trying to wake me up. I try to ignore it, I try to roll over, but finally, I look over, I open my eyes begrudgingly, and I see my friend Danny trying to shake me awake. And I know right away what he needs. It happened constantly. I had to wake him up a few times too. Danny needs to go to the bathroom. So I roll over and I look at the counselor because the counselor needs to know that we're leaving. And the counselor doesn't even really want to get up. He doesn't want to escort us over to the outhouse. So he just points at the door and he tells me to watch him from the door. Like, I don't have to go with him either. The outhouse is right there, but make sure the door is open so I could see him and you can see him. So the rules of the camp are very straight and clear. You have to go with a buddy and a counselor has to escort you. But the counselor was sleeping and he was basically telling us, just go, we're both watching. And before you tear that counselor to pieces in the comments, because I know you're thinking, if my kid was there, I would want him to be escorted to the bathroom and this lazy counselor won't even get up. You just have to understand that we're halfway through this camp. Everybody has a level of trust with each other, and you're kind of in that flow where rules start to get bent a little bit. Also, on top of that, our cabin was by far the closest to the outhouse. We were as far from the main building as we possibly could be. We were very close to the tree line, but we were also only like 20 yards away from the outhouse. Like, you could see the door from where this counselor is laying. So specifically for our group, the rules are a little bit different. Like, it is right there. He doesn't have to walk for 3 to 5 minutes just to get to the outhouse. If he jogs fast enough, he'll be there in 4 seconds. And this wasn't even the first time we did it this way. It's not like tonight was the night that he was the most exhausted. This was very common for our cabin. It was right there. So I roll out of my bunk bed, I open the door all the way. I have to keep it wide open so the counselor has his eyes a little bit open. He's dozing on and off, my eyes half closed, watching him. Danny runs across the little clearing in between our cabin and the outhouse, pops open the door and gets in there. I'm leaning on this door, half asleep, waiting till I hear the click of the outhouse, and it only takes about 20-30 seconds. Kid just took a whiz. And I see the door pop back open, I see Danny start slightly jogging back towards the cabin. We all want to get back to sleep. But as I'm slow blinking, trying to keep my sleepiness inside of me, I see Danny look both ways as he's running back towards our cabin, almost like he's like crossing a street. You know how you just naturally like look to your left and right, make sure nothing's coming? And he looks to his left, nothing, and he looks to his right, and I could see that he saw something, like something caught his eye, and he stopped halfway in between the outhouse and the cabin. And now he's completely stopped, looking in that direction with a curious look on his face. And I'm standing there so annoyed with him because it is the middle of the night. Get back in here, my feet are cold. And right as I'm about to kind of like shout towards him, like, dude, hurry up, my lips are opening and this kid takes off towards the tree line. He starts running in that direction faster than he was running back towards the cabin. I don't immediately get concerned. I just get more annoyed. So I turn around, I shake the counselor awake, and I basically point towards the door. The counselor had closed his eyes. He was barely even paying attention. And I tell him that Danny ran over there towards the left, like he's messing around outside. I was basically going full tattletale on this kid because I didn't want to deal with it. And the camp counselor jumps up and sprints after him because this is on him. He was supposed to go with him in the first place. I could jump back into bed. He could go track this kid down. It's not really my responsibility. So he runs out the front door in the direction that I told him that Danny went. And within about 30 seconds, I could hear in the distance him dragging Danny back towards the cabin, back up the stairs. And once they're inside the cabin, he's scolding him and letting him know, like, if you do something like that again, we don't get to bend the rules around here. The next 2 weeks are going to suck and they're going to be strict. Even though he was kind of covering his own butt because he was supposed to go out there with him. He was still threatening Danny that if he acted out like that again, it was going to be a major issue. But there was one thing about their conversation as I was dozing off back to sleep that I found very odd and it stuck with me. The camp counselor wasn't only telling him to not do it again, he was also kind of pressing him about what Danny saw and what made him run in that direction. He kept saying things like, "What did you see out there? Like, tell me what you saw. And Danny kept saying, I didn't see anything. I didn't see anything. And it was super weird because the counselor asked this kid the same question about 5 times, as if he didn't believe Danny whatsoever. He wasn't like, why did you run away? He said, what did you see? And Danny adamantly said that he didn't see anything. His story did not change. He's like, I did not see anything out there. I'm sorry for running off. And the weirdest part about that entire situation was that Danny was completely lying. He lied to the counselor's face 5 times in a row. He said, I did not see a thing. But the second all of the kids were alone and the counselor wasn't around listening, he started telling us about what he saw. And you might get a chuckle out of what he told us. He got all of the boys together and was like, guys, I have to tell all of you something. And we have no idea what he's gonna say, but we weren't expecting this. The kid goes, I saw a glowing unicorn in the woods last night. And we all start laughing in this kid's face. This kid got in trouble last night. He ran off and he's trying to tell us that he saw a glowing unicorn in the woods. And we all started ripping on him. We started making fun of him. He was the butt of every joke for half an hour. But he kept saying, I'm not lying. I'll prove it to you. I'll show you guys tonight. It's gonna be there at the exact same time tonight. And we loved to hear this. We loved that the kid was doubling down on his lie, extending the joke even further. So we start making like little bets with him. I'll bet you $30 that I don't have that there's not a unicorn out there. And Danny is jumping back like, I'll bet you 100. And we're like, we'll bet you 250. And the bets keep growing until it gets to the really, really juicy ones, which are the bets that we can actually follow through with, which are if there's not a glowing unicorn out there tonight, you, Danny, have to shave your head and your eyebrows. So we had Danny's eyebrows on the line, and we knew that we were gonna win. So we all agreed to it. We're so pumped. We have a hair razor in the cabin, and we have some eyebrows on the line, and we know we're gonna win. Danny is gonna look like a complete dork. He's gonna have a bald face. It's gonna be the best thing ever. We're gonna be talking about this for years, and we're all ready to go. We all know the game plan. Let the sleepy counselor fall asleep, and we all get up right about 3 a.m. and we let Danny take us to where he saw the glowing unicorn. Then we get to laugh in his face, run back in, and those eyebrows are gone. So it's 3 a.m. We all silently climb out of bed. We don't put any shoes or socks on. We're as quiet as we could possibly be. One of the kids opens the cabin door ever so slowly, and we all sneak out one by one, and he closes it behind us. And once we're all out there, we tippy-toe about 30 yards away until we know we're out of earshot, and then we tell Danny to take us where you need to take us. And as we're getting closer to the trees and we're following Danny, I'm annoyed that I don't have any shoes on because I'm stepping on twigs, I'm stepping on acorns, and I start to think about all of the things that Danny made us do to come out here. One of the major things was that we can't bring shoes because the unicorn will hear us sneaking up on it. And now here we are, outside at 3 a.m., no shoes on, and Danny is pointing in the same direction that he was looking the night before. And we're all ready to dogpile on this kid and sneak back inside when we see something right behind the tree line. None of us could see exactly what it was, but it was letting off like a little illumination, like a light glowing hue, probably 10-20 feet into the woods, and you could see its figure like a little bit, and it's slowly moving from our left to our right. It seems to be on all fours. It seems to be glowing a little bit, and Danny's pointing at it like, I told you, it's right there. Then he starts waving us on like, follow me, we gotta get closer to it, because from here, we can't see what it is really. So we start creeping closer to the woods, and as we're getting closer to it, we can't tell if it heard us or if it was just naturally moving, but it seemed as if it changed course to go deeper into the woods, forcing us to go deeper into the woods to get a better look at it. And before you think what a crazy idea to go into the woods in the middle of the night, these woods were right next to our cabin and we were in them every single day. We knew where we were, and we were all comfortable going maybe 100 feet into the woods. We wouldn't go any further than that, but where we were didn't feel dangerous to us whatsoever. Like, we could still see the cabin from where we were. We weren't far away. We weren't going to go miles in. We were just trying to get a little bit of a closer look at this oddly illuminated animal. And as we're creeping up on this thing, we could see it from behind, and it kind of looked like it had gotten kind of far away from us, but it had looped around like it was turning and coming back in our direction. So we all kind of communicate with each other, stop right here, hide behind some trees and bushes. It's coming back around. We don't have to creep any further. Let's just wait for it so we could get a better look in a minute or two. And we were right, this thing was coming back in our direction. And I remember in that moment feeling so excited as this thing was approaching us. The closer it got, the happier I got. Nothing about this situation felt dangerous to me. And I know as a kid, your sense of mortality and your sense of danger is warped, but it never felt quite like this. Like I had no indication that this could be dangerous whatsoever. If anything, I felt happy and euphoric. Like, I'm gonna be honest with you, I was hyped up. I was on a month-long vacation in the middle of the woods. We snuck out in the middle of the night. I'm with my best friends. Danny's about to get his eyebrows shaved off, but actually now it's looking like he might not. And I'm about to see a unicorn, which is even better. And as this thing is getting closer and closer, you'd think we'd get quieter and quieter not to scare it off. But it was as if we were in class at school and somebody did something funny and we weren't allowed to laugh, but that made the joke that much funnier, and we all started bursting out into a genuine laughter. It was like we couldn't hold this in. The closer this thing got to us, the more euphoric and happy we felt, and the harder all of us laughed. It literally felt like it was about to be the best moment of our lives, the best moment of the summer. And eventually this thing finally got close enough to us. Our laughter didn't scare it off, and it definitely wasn't a unicorn. It looked like a deer at first. And mind you, this thing was still moving. We were still hiding. I was seeing it in between trees. I was seeing it from like peeking out behind the tree that I was hiding behind. So I was seeing it in glimpses. But each glimpse that I saw, it looked a little bit different than the last time. And the first thing that I noticed about it, the first couple good looks I got at it, it wasn't just glowing. Like, it definitely had some type of eerie illumination coming off of it, but it also had some type of flicker thing going on, almost like it was glitching as it was moving. Every few steps it would do this spastic glitchy movement, and its posture would change. It would look like it had a different form to it, but then it would kind of snap back to all fours. And once it got past this big tree, I was able to see its head, and it definitely wasn't a unicorn. It did not have one horn sticking out of the middle of its forehead. It had two antlers sticking out of its head. It was 100% some kind of buck. It had antlers, a deer head, but when it would glitch, it would go from walking on all fours looking kinda normal to looking like it was kinda distorted and sometimes even walking on only two of its back hooves. It looked very unnatural, but also something about it looked elegant and inviting. I don't know how else to explain it other than that. There was this glow of elegance coming off of it. And we're all watching this thing, walking in front of us, glitching out, and we're laughing hysterically, having the best time. And then Danny hopped out from behind his tree and started running towards this thing, as if like this is the next part of this activity, and all of us just followed suit. I remember popping out from behind my tree and like, this is going to be the next fun part. We chase after this thing or we catch up to it. It's like a dog chasing an ice cream truck. You don't really know what you're going to do if you actually catch it. We were all just running towards this thing and it felt right. Something about it felt so fun to us, and the glow that was coming off this thing plus the light of the moon was illuminating the forest just enough that it wasn't this horrible, dark, eerie, woodsy thing. It had this weird light to it. It made it less scary. It made it more inviting. It made it feel like we were doing exactly what we were supposed to be doing. And obviously, whatever kind of deer this was, it was startled by a group of young kids laughing hysterically and running towards it, and it started glitching off deeper into the woods. But we weren't stopping. We see this thing, it's pretty fast, it's just going deeper into the woods, and we're just chasing after this thing. We are having the time of our life. I remember my heart beating, taking big inhales, sprinting as fast as I could, and then I heard the first grunt, followed by what seemed like a hailstorm of pebbles hitting the trees around us, some of them hitting my shins and my legs, and it was like the entire moment changed. All of the fun that we were just having evaporated in a millisecond, and we had no idea what to do. We all just skid to a stop, having no idea what made that sound and what threw those rocks in our direction. So we're all frozen there looking at each other, and the grunts aren't stopping. If anything, they're building up, and we hear something coming in our direction crunching leaves, snapping sticks, and as it's getting closer, it sounds like it's clubbing tree trunks in some type of aggressive rampage or some kind of territorial act to let us know that it's there. And the happy glow that we were chasing that was illuminating our surroundings was running off into the distance, leaving us in woods that are getting darker and darker, with this sound getting closer and closer. And we're all frozen, not really sure what to do, not terrified quite yet, when finally this thing emerged in between us and the glow in the distance, so we're able to see its silhouette about 20 yards away from us, and our source of light is fading into the distance. And that's when panic set in. We couldn't see any features of its face, we could only see the outline of its body and like the hue of its coloring. And this thing was massive. It was thick, it had a brown hue to its entire figure, and it was walking on 2 legs. And on top of all of that, it was acting wildly aggressive, and it was clearly planning on continuing to pursue us, because once it saw us, all of us trying to hide, once it locked in on one of us, it started coming towards us. This thing wasn't just being territorial, it was being aggressive. And I hear some of the other kids in my group start bursting out in tears. I hear them crying. I felt fear in my chest, but I wasn't crying immediately because I was kind of frozen in fear. But what I heard and what I listened to was one of the kids yell, "Run." And the second he said it, I heard kids scampering to their feet and starting to run back towards the cabin, and I was not about to be the last one back at the cabin. I wanted to get a couple people in between me and that thing. So I start taking off running, trying my best to get to the cabin first, or at least be in the middle of the pack so I don't get picked off by this thing. I managed to not trip or fall. I saw a couple kids stumble. They got back to their feet. I didn't hear anybody scream in agony, but who knows who got dragged off. I was one of the first kids back to the cabin. We did not care about waking up the counselor. We ran in, kids are crying. Once everybody got in, we slammed the door. We didn't know if it was everybody, but like the main core of the group were in the cabin. We didn't know if this thing was following us all the way back. So we slammed the door. The counselor's up to his feet. He's freaking out. He's like, "Where were you guys?" Kids are crying, screaming, confessing about what we were doing. Some of the kids had already come to conclusions and are saying things like, "Bigfoot attacked us." The pure euphoria that we were feeling when we were out there chasing that deer thing turned into complete terror the second we saw whatever the second thing was. And the rest of the night basically turned into confessions and interrogations from all of the camp counselors. And we all told the exact same story. Nobody was lying. But the real story painted a very clear picture. All roads were leading back to Danny being the ringleader here. Like, it was his fault we were out there, which then led to Danny being sent home the next day, and for our cabin to be monitored twice as hard. I was just a kid at the time, so I didn't really understand what was going on or what even really happened to us. But I do remember the counselors acting as if it was a much bigger deal than it felt like. Like, I was over it after a day or two, but it was the talk of camp for a while, and I would hear the counselors talking about it, theories, what they thought it was, and then I would hear whispers where they would say things that they were purposely trying to keep away from us. One sentence that always stuck with me is a counselor said directly to another counselor, "Thank God it wasn't the buck moon yet." My family didn't have the money to send me back to this camp every single year. If we could go every single year, I would have. I loved that place. But the next time I had the realistic opportunity to go back was 4 years later when I was about 13 years old. Obviously, when you don't go to a place for 4 years, when you return there, you go through a reacclimation process again, very similar to my first time there. Most of the counselors were different this time around. I was bunked up with different people. I didn't really know anybody. Plus, I was 4 years older, so it was a completely unique experience from the first time. The activities were different, the rules were different because we were older. The place that I stayed on the campsite was different because the older kids were located in a different area. But with all of that being said, it was still an amazing experience, just as good as the first time around. And by the time I was in the middle of that month, 2 weeks were done, we had 2 weeks ahead of us, I felt like I was on top of the world again. Like I said, the older kids stayed in a different area. We were sleeping in a cabin that was in a completely different spot, almost across the campsite from the last time that I was there. And I kind of like this spot better. We weren't all the way by the outhouses and on the edge of the tree line. This one was really close to the lake. It was a nicer setup. They gave it to the slightly older kids on purpose. So this new cabin was in between the lake and the main building where all the indoor activities were and where the food was served, like the dining hall and stuff. And I'm not going to pretend like I liked this area where we were staying so much more than the other place because of what happened at the other place. I wasn't scared about what happened 4 years earlier. We basically got over that within a couple days, and the rest of the last trip was fantastic. This was just a nice new change of scenery. I would have stayed at the other cabins too. It didn't matter to me. Nothing about what happened the first time that I was there stuck with me in a negative way. If anything, in hindsight, it was another thing that was fun about my time there. It was like a spooky camp story that I could reminisce on. Nobody got hurt, nobody went missing, everything was all good. It was just a fun campfire story. So I wasn't even slightly thinking about the incident from 4 years ago. I was completely in my own life, living activity by activity with these new friends that I had made. We were halfway through the month. In that peak period, we're all dead asleep in the middle of the night, and we hear the bells start ringing, and we hear somebody speaking over the loudspeaker like an announcement to the entire campsite. And everybody sits up, groggy and confused. We're all trying to listen. No one has any idea what's going on. We're groggily putting on our clothes, tying our shoes. The counselors are telling us to slowly walk outside. There's an emergency meeting going on in the center of the camp. Once I'm out there, I see all of the other cabins emptying and congregating in the middle, and I see the adults coming from the main building, and everybody seems to be in a little bit of a panic, as if something has gone very, very wrong. I can't hear what happened yet, but people are making announcements, people are whispering, and my group is slowly approaching the large gathering in the middle. Right away, the main priority seemed to be counting the kids. We weren't getting any information about what was going on, but our counselors were doing head counts, calling out like, we have everybody here, and it didn't seem like any kids were missing. But that was until we got to the announcements. All of the cabins that had evacuated to the middle, they had all their kids, but the reason that we were out there was because one kid was already missing. In the middle of the night, a kid vanished. Apparently in the middle of the night, this kid got up, left the cabin, and nobody had seen him since. One kid that was sleeping in the same cabin as the missing kid said that he was kind of half awake and he saw the missing kid slip out of the cabin, but he was groggy. He wasn't sure if he was dreaming. He thought the kid was going for a bathroom break. He didn't think he had to sit up, but he had a faint memory of watching the kid slip out of the front door. So they knew that he left voluntarily, but the kid never came back. Over an hour had passed. The counselor woke up and by chance saw this empty bed. He easily could have slept through the night and this kid could have been gone for hours, but luckily this counselor woke up, alerted everybody, and now here we are, congregating in the middle of the campsite, trying to put together a search party. And obviously everybody was concerned. All of the kids were concerned too. Everybody wanted to help. It seemed like this big deal, and it seemed as if the adults needed help. And the kid that went missing clearly needed help. But they were very stern with the fact that all of the kids that were under like 15 years old were not allowed to search throughout the night. They had to go back to their cabins immediately. The adults were going to start the search. They were going to call in for help. And in the morning, the younger kids could help searching around the campsite just in case he's hiding somewhere. They made it extremely clear that nobody was allowed to leave the cabins that night. You're not allowed to go to the outhouses. Here's a bucket in each cabin. Keep the doors locked. Nobody go anywhere. The last thing we need is a second missing kid. So all of us had no other choice but to go right back to sleep, even though it was hard to fall back asleep because we could hear all of the adults calling this kid's name, wandering around the campsite. Usually it was super quiet there, but now it was a really hectic night. But all of us managed to get a couple hours of shut-eye. Of course, we woke up the next morning. First thing everybody wants to know is, did they find him? And the answer was absolutely not. Nobody found him. Nobody's found any signs of him. And we're all still looking for him. So by that time, the authorities had gotten involved. People had come to help. The adults were really organizing search parties. There were dogs there, and now all of the younger kids were awake, and they were going to use us to help look for him. But like I said, we're only allowed to look around the campsite. We have to stay on our property, and they told us to search in places that you think somebody could hide. Maybe the kid wandered off, maybe he had a bad day, maybe somebody was picking on him, maybe he's hiding, maybe he doesn't want to be around people. We don't really know if he went off into the woods. We don't know if he went to the outhouse. This kid could be hiding in the dining hall. He could be hiding under a table. He could be hiding in garbage cans, behind garbage cans. They basically told us for us to do a thorough game of hide and seek on the campsite while they search the woods on the outskirts. So they gave us a brief description of the kid, what he looked like, his hair color, and then they told us what he was wearing. They said he was wearing a light blue hoodie, flannel pajama pants, and no shoes. At least that's what the kid that saw him slip out of the front door said. So that's all the information we had. We were looking for a light blue hoodie hiding somewhere. So we're searching everywhere. We're doing our absolute best. We want to help the cause. And eventually, we make our way over to near the cabin that the kid left from. And once we see that that's where a lot of the authorities are, and a lot of the search dogs are, we're very curious because we want to see if they've found anything. And the closer that we get, we see what they're doing inside. They have the dogs smelling the kid's clothes. And I noticed something very interesting. They're in the same cabin that I was in 4 years ago, right by the outhouse, right by the same tree line. And when they have the dogs smell some of his clothes, it's like they caught a scent immediately. These dogs seemed supremely confident that they knew what direction this kid went. They basically dragged their owners, and the rest of the adults followed suit into this tree line in a very specific direction. And we were pretty happy with what we were seeing. Those dogs seemed like they knew exactly where he went. So now it was just a waiting game until the dogs found him. We weren't allowed to follow them into the woods, so all we could do is keep looking for him on the campsite, even though it seemed like he was out that direction. So that particular group is gone for hours. We're searching for a few hours, but eventually, we're still only like 13 years old. The people that are in charge of us are like, go eat dinner and go to your cabin. We can't say no, we want to keep searching. We're also liabilities. They're like, eat your food, get in the cabin, and we have to listen to them. So even though we're stuck in our cabin, and the sun's going down, we're still curious about what's happening outside. All activities for the day were taken away from us, and this was the only thing that was going on. So we have kids at every single window, scouting the area to see if anybody comes back with something good. And as everybody's starting to re-enter the campsite, all of these adults, all of these search parties, we see the group with the dogs coming towards the middle of the campsite, and they're holding a blue hoodie. And all of us run over to the window. We're all peering through it. We see the kids in the other cabins also peering through it. And all of the adults are swarming towards this group of dogs and this clear blue garment that they're holding up to everybody. And we see them passing around the hoodie. We see them run it to one of the cabins and hold it up to the kid that said he saw him leave. And we see the kid nodding, and it's a full confirmation that this is that kid's hoodie. They found it, but they didn't find him. He's nowhere to be found. And we're stuck in this cabin waiting anxiously. We see our counselor go to this group of adults, start talking to everybody, gather all of the information, and finally he comes back to our cabin and gives us the slow drip of information about what happened. So we're hoping for good news, and this is what the counselor tells us. He says that that is 100% his hoodie. They found it about 6 miles away from the campsite in the direction that you saw them leave, but they didn't find him. But there's also no signs of a struggle. The hoodie was clean, it wasn't torn up, it didn't look like a predator was carrying it, there was no blood on it, there was barely any dirt on it. It was like the kid took it off and dropped it on the floor, but there's no sign of him, so the search is still on. And I didn't understand the significance of what he told me at the time. In my little kid brain, I was like, okay, so he hiked about 6 miles, he got hot, he dropped his hoodie, so they're closing in on him, like they'll probably find him soon. It didn't register with me that an 8 or 9-year-old kid couldn't hike that far away by himself. That's not just a leisurely hike for a child with no shoes on. He physically couldn't have gotten that far. And then they only find one of his garments, and there's no sign of him in the area, as if he might have gone even further. It didn't register with me. I didn't know how bizarre it was at the time. I thought the adults will handle it, they're closing in on him, they'll find him soon. And I remember looking at the counselor and not understanding why he looked so scared and concerned. Because to me, that was an absolute win. The kid obviously ran away. He just dropped his hoodie, there wasn't a struggle, no predator attacked him. But this camp counselor is acting as if this is a horrible, bizarre situation. And my little kid mind couldn't grasp it. So we have to go to sleep that night. There's nothing else we could do, there's no help that we could give anybody, and we have to hit the hay. Naturally, all of the adults start a secondary search in the area that they found the hoodie. But this was like way far out. They were like 6 miles away scanning that area, so all of the adults were pretty much gone. We had a bunch of camp counselors there for us, but I'm talking about the higher ups and then all of the help that they called in. When everybody was around camp, it felt like that's what was going on. Everybody's searching for this kid. But when the search is miles off the campsite, kind of feels like there's nothing to do. And they found his garment all the way out there, so they know that he's not at the camp. So we were all meant to go back to our regular daily routine, like we go back to our camp activities as if nothing is happening. They made the decision for us to go back to business as usual because the hoodie had no damage on it. There was no signs of bears or mountain lions in the area. There was no real signs of danger. Everything pointed towards the fact that this kid ran away on his own. So all of the other campers going back to business as usual wasn't much of an issue, unless one of us wanted to run away too. They felt like there was not a threat, and we could go back to being kids and the adults will handle the search. So our activity for the day was fishing. They brought us onto a boat, they took us out in the middle of the lake. It was a fairly good time, and I don't know exactly what time it was when this happened, but I know it was like late afternoon. It wasn't morning or early afternoon, but it also wasn't nighttime. And we're chilling in our boat, waiting for a bite, waiting for a nibble on one of our rods, when we see a boat coming from the other side of the lake, flying past us, like at a speed that they would tell us to definitely don't drive the boat that fast, and definitely don't drive a boat that fast near another boat that's fishing. Like, you're going to cause wakes, you're going to scare away the fish. It would be considered inconsiderate. But as this boat is approaching us and passing us, everybody on that boat seems to be frantic and like they are driving with urgency, like rules don't apply to them right now. And almost immediately after, somebody on that boat radioed to all the counselors in the area to let them know to come back to shore. So we have no idea what's going on. We turn our boat around, we pull our lines out of the water, and we try to get back to shore as fast as we can. It seems as if there's another emergency happening. Maybe another kid went missing. Maybe they found evidence of something dangerous. We don't know what we're walking into, but it feels like we're walking into something bad when we get off that boat. But as we got to shore, we see the boat that was flying past us parked there. They had beat us there, obviously. And as we're entering the campsite, we see some type of celebration going on. The energy is not bad. It does not seem like there's a horrible emergency. It seems as if spirits are high and people are celebrating something. And past the group that's celebrating, we see a group of adults walking a kid into the main hall, and it's the kid that went missing. They found him. So we get into the big group and we're asking around, we're trying to get some information. What happened? Where did they find him? What's going on? And everybody was telling us they found him, he's all good, he's in good spirits, he's healthy, he's safe, it's all fine. So that's what the entire celebration was about. It's not like they were holding the kid up in the air and chanting his name. The adults immediately took him to take him into the main hall and question him because he was potentially in trouble for running away. But the celebration was that he wasn't missing anymore. And no matter how much trouble he's in, at least he's alive. So once all of the adults had spoken to him, and they got all of the information out of him, and then the adults gave that information to the counselors that then gave the information to us, is when it started getting very weird. So apparently, that boat that was flying by us on the lake, the kid was on that boat, but it makes absolutely no sense because they had found him on the opposite side of the lake drinking some water near the shore. But there was a search party going on near the campsite, so across this very large lake, 6 miles in the other direction. So based on where he was, this kid would have had to hike 6 miles in the opposite direction of the lake, take off his hoodie, turn left, hike around the entire lake, which is close to 15 mile hike, and then hang out on the opposing side of the lake for like 2 days. And he was 8 or 9 years old. And the most bizarre part about it was that he was completely okay. He was hydrated, he was fed, he didn't have a scratch on him. When they were inspecting his feet, no blisters, no calluses, no cuts. This kid just hiked 20 miles in the past 48 hours. His feet would be in pieces. So even though nothing about his whereabouts was adding up, they had an eyewitness account. They could ask this kid, what happened? Why did you run off? What is going on? How did you end up on the other side of the lake? Are you okay? And this kid was just in great spirits. And he's like, I'm completely fine. I had food, I had water. Like, no stress whatsoever, as if he didn't just go through a traumatic experience. And when they asked him why he left, like, were people bullying you? What was going on in camp? Why would you leave camp like that? He replied in a very jolly manner, I was following the unicorn. And when they asked him, how on earth did you get on the other side of the lake? And where have you been this entire time? We found your hoodie that direction. Where were you? He said, as if it was a completely reasonable response, Mr. Leather took me there. Mr. Leather had been taking care of me. Obviously, the adults started freaking out, asking this kid who Mr. Leather was and if Mr. Leather did anything to hurt him. But this kid was like 8 or 9 years old. He was adamant that he liked Mr. Leather. Mr. Leather's nice. And he didn't understand why the adults were reacting in such a way, even though what he said came off as crazy. So they start digging and they're trying to get more information from this kid to see if Mr. Leather did anything to him. But it seemed as if the kid's only regret about the whole situation was that he shouldn't have followed the unicorn because it wasn't nice like Mr. Leather. The next time I got the opportunity to come back to camp was when I was 17 years old, and the only reason I was able to come back was because I signed up to be a counselor that time. It was my first time being a counselor there. It's not like I was paid almost nothing, to be honest. It was more of like a work for stay thing, and it's almost like a trial summer where they're training you to be a real counselor in the future. Like, I guess you could say I was more of a counselor's aide than a counselor in general, but for me, it was an opportunity to go back to this amazing place. So obviously, this situation was a little bit different. Instead of me showing up as a camper and the whole month is filled with activities for me, I have to show up a week early to do the training to be this counselor's aide. And we're going over camp routines, emergency tactics, the rules of the campsite, how to handle behavioral issues. You got to learn CPR and learn the rules and the regulations of the campsite. But if I'm being honest with you, it wasn't super intense. It was pretty laid back and chill. It had a similar vibe to if you were a camper there. It's like, hey, you just got to learn these couple responsibilities, but other than that, have a good time. And on top of that, it's my first year there. Nobody's expecting that much of me. Yes, am I learning things? Absolutely. But do I have an overwhelming responsibility? Absolutely not. So we do the orientation, everybody introduces themselves to each other, and eventually they hand you over to the senior counselor that's going to be like your mentor for the summer. And wouldn't you know it, the senior counselor that I was allotted to was actually Danny, and I know what you're thinking. Didn't Danny get kicked out of this camp for bad behavior? Like, why would they bring Danny, this kid, back and give him any level of authority here? And that's exactly what I thought. So that's the first thing that I asked him. How did you manage to get back in here? And I reminded him what I remembered about the situation. I was like, didn't you get kicked out of here a few years ago, like when we met as kids? And we had a good laugh about it because that was literally the last time we had seen each other. Because he wasn't even there the last time that I had went in 2009. Because every summer has 2 30-day periods. You either choose the first one or the second one. So I did one and he did the other one, so we didn't cross paths then. So it'd been like 8 years since we had seen each other. And I was thinking he was banished from this camp forever, like they hated this kid. But what he told me was that it actually had kind of brought him closer to the camp in general. Like, yes, did he get scolded? Yes, was he in trouble? Absolutely, they were not happy with him. But it was a learning experience, and of course they gave him another opportunity to show that he was responsible and could turn things around. He had apologized to all of the adults immediately and told all of them that this camp was his favorite place in the world, so he didn't even have to take a year off. They immediately invited him back the very next year, and he had literally come here every single year since. So once he started getting a little bit older, they started training him to be a counselor right away because he turned into this model camper. He told me that that incident that happened all of those years ago was literally the reason he was still here. And it was the reason that he was probably going to try to continue to work here for his whole life. It was like a major moment in his life that changed the trajectory. And I was so happy for him. This was a great story. This is like a juvenile delinquent success story. Something horrible happened, he turned his life around and he found his passion. So anyway, the week goes by, Danny's teaching me everything, he's getting me up to speed. I like him as much as I did when I first met him, and eventually all of the campers arrive. And we're assigned a specific group of kids that are our responsibility. So we're assigned a younger group of kids, a group of 8 and 9-year-olds, which we were pretty happy about because we didn't want to deal with like the angsty teenagers. Even though we were angsty teenagers, the 13-year-olds knew how to like poke your buttons and get under your skin. At least the 8 and 9-year-olds were a little bit scared of you and a little bit easier to manage. And it's actually funny, we got assigned the exact same cabin that Danny and I had stayed in all of those years ago. So it was this fun, nostalgic moment where Danny and I are bringing these little 8 and 9-year-olds into this cabin for their first time, and we're watching them living their core memories, and it's really, really wholesome. It felt different inside of the cabin and on the campsite in general as a 17-year-old, especially a 17-year-old with a little bit of responsibility. It didn't have that magical feeling that it used to, but it was a great feeling creating a magical environment for these 8 and 9-year-olds that are about to experience it for their first time. Because you see how excited they are and they're about to build these amazing core memories. It's almost like making Christmas great for your children. Like, yeah, it doesn't feel like Christmas to you anymore, but you could see that it feels like Christmas to them. So it means just that much more. And we absolutely lucked out with the group of kids that we got. They were all just little sporty kids. They all got along. None of them had bad attitudes, and they weren't difficult at all. If I said no, they said yes, Captain. And of course there's bumps along the way. We're on a campsite for a month and these are young kids. This is a place filled with kids doing activities. They scrape their knees, they bust open their elbows, people get into little scuffles, they're arguing with each other, there's tiffs, some kids cry here and there. But overall, it wasn't very turbulent. We really lucked out with these kids. They listened well, they were respectful, and they were all really kind-hearted. So Danny and I felt like it was our obligation to give them the best summer of their lives. And again, we're about halfway through this month. 2 weeks in with 2 weeks left, everybody is enjoying the camp festivities. But even though the kids were having an amazing time, all of the counselors and the people that are in charge would have meetings once a week just to talk about anything that went wrong, any rule changes, any upcoming weather events, any potential dangers, and it was just a weekly gathering. And every week there was a different warning about a different thing. Usually it wasn't very major. So we go to this one specific debriefing as all the kids are eating. We have about 30 minutes to talk. And for the most part, the meeting goes as usual. Make sure the fires are out at night, make sure the kids are asleep, look out for bears, blah blah blah, keep the first aid kits around, make sure you keep your eye on the water when the kids are there, regular stuff. But there was one thing that the man in charge of the entire camp said that stood out to me. He addressed all of the senior aides and he said, don't forget that the buck moon is this weekend and we're in a dry summer. And I looked around the room because that was gibberish to me, but it seemed as if all of the senior aides were nodding their head in understanding, as if they knew exactly what he was talking about and they had a serious look on their face like, yeah, don't worry boss, we know what's coming. But I had no idea what he meant by that. So the second that meeting was wrapped up, I talked to Danny and I'm like, yo dude, what was that about? And honestly, I kind of felt stupid asking because everybody seemed to know what he meant but me. And I see Danny, I know him pretty well at this point, and I see in his eyes that he's trying to act hush-hush about the topic and trying to change the direction of the conversation, but I'm not having it. I let him try to dribble around the conversation for most of the walk back to the cabin, but as we're approaching the kids, I finally really press him, and I'm like, dude, why are you beating around the bush? What is so serious about this? Just tell me, dude. And he started acting really weird and he looked at me and he said, it's not that serious, man. Just if you notice any of the kids start acting weird this week, just tell me and I'll handle it. This reply didn't help whatsoever because I'm like, why are you acting like one of these kids is about to turn into a werewolf when the full moon hits? And I could tell that he's racking his brain about how he's gonna tell me something. But he lands on a question instead. And he asked me, what was the last year that you were here? And I reply, 4 years ago, 2009. And I could see that he does a little bit of math in his head. And he looks at me and he says, oh, you were here for the last dry summer too. And then I see another spark behind his eye, as if he had another realization. And the last time you were here before that was the year that you were with me, right? And I nod my head like, yeah, like what are you trying to get at, dude? And this kid starts to like chuckle and laugh and he's looking at me kind of crazy and he's like, you must have some bad luck, don't you? You only show up here when it's a dry summer. And I kind of chuckle back because I'm like, well, I mean, you're right. I don't have the best luck. Thanks for pointing that out, but nothing that you said here, none of the questions that you asked me gave me any clarity. So I follow up and I'm like, okay, do we have to keep the kids extra hydrated because of the dry summer? What's the protocol? And then he finally says something that gives me a hint of clarity. He goes, there's like this stupid superstition around here about the week of the buck moon. And it's like specifically during a dry summer. They say that if there's been no rain before the buck moon, it thins the veil and things that aren't usually in the forest can make their way through. But way more importantly, they say that sometimes when the full moon is getting close, the kids start to act up a little bit. They say that it messes with their sleep and they get overtired or something. I haven't really noticed it, but this is the first dry summer that I'm working here opposed to just attending. And I thought, okay, that makes sense. He didn't want to spook me with some weird superstition that he didn't really take seriously. I know that the kids might get extra irritable, and whatever, a buck moon dry summer, it's not really a big deal. And he basically nods his head, ending the conversation, giving me a facial expression like, yeah, dude, I wouldn't worry about it too much. So we get back to the cabin, we have responsibilities, we have kids to look after, but in the back of my head, I couldn't stop thinking about the fact that every time that I had been here, it's been a dry summer. And both times that I had been here, something weird happened. And not enough to scare me away forever, but enough for me to notice the coincidence in that moment. But I don't have much time to dwell on it. These days are packed. This camp has so many activities and festivities. Your day just moves on. You don't have time to marinate on thoughts. So time moves on. We have stuff to do. At this point, it's 2 days past that briefing. I'm not even thinking about that anymore. The day is over. We've been out in the hot sun all day. We are ready to go to sleep. We're exhausted. And I came to realize that you don't ever really get a full night's sleep as a camp counselor because there's 8 kids in here, and one of those kids always needs something. If they've had a bad dream, if they're homesick, if they wet the bed, if they have to go to the bathroom, there's always something. You're up 3 to 4 times a night. It's like you're a newborn's parent. So about halfway into the month, instead of you reaching this like peak fun, as the counselor, the overtiredness starts to catch up to you. And it must have started catching up for Danny as well, because I was out cold, he was out cold, and neither of us woke up for it. It wasn't until a gust of wind sucked the air out of the cabin, slamming the door back shut, did we realize that not one of our campers was still in the cabin with us in the middle of the night. We woke up at the exact same moment, the moment the door clapped against the door frame, and we looked at each other and realized what was going on in the exact same moment. This was the night before the buck moon, so the moonlight was like pretty bright. It wasn't a full moon bright, but it wasn't pitch black outside because of it. So we jumped to our feet and we're scurrying around this cabin, moving blankets, hoping at least one kid is in here with this moonlight coming in through the windows, and no one's here. It is like a nightmare for a counselor. Every single one of your kids is gone. And these kids didn't even try to make it seem like they were there. They weren't tucking pillows under their blankets. They left this cabin willy-nilly, didn't care if they got caught, didn't care if we woke up and saw that nobody was there. It seemed as if they had no remorse for their actions. They weren't even thinking about the consequences. And you want to keep composure. You want to think that everything's going to be okay. But in a moment like that, you realize that there are 8 young kids that are supposed to be your responsibility out in the middle of the night. And that's when the panic really starts setting in, because they're all your responsibility. You're gonna have to hear from every parent if any of their kids get hurt. So we sprint out of that cabin and we're whipping our heads in every direction to see any sign of where these kids went. And I remember thinking, I hope they're just all at the outhouse. Maybe they all had to go to the bathroom at the same time. Or maybe they're sneaking over to the girls' cabin to peek in because they're little weirdos. I was hoping for the best, but I saw no signs of anything good. And we were about to start ringing the big bell to get everybody's attention, to wake everybody up to come out of the cabin so we could all go searching for them. But in that exact same moment, we heard them all laughing. It was as if one of them had made the funniest joke in the world, and they all simultaneously started laughing at us. And we looked towards the tree line into the forest, and it felt like they were watching us, laughing at us from inside of the trees. And as our eyes are getting acclimated to the lighting, I start to see figures running back and forth. And I see that these kids are running around, swarming about 30 feet into the woods. All of them are in there, and they're just running around, laughing hysterically. And initially you feel like, okay, that makes me feel a little bit better. They're all laughing and having fun. It's not like they're scared. It would be worse if you heard them yelling or calling for help. At least they're laughing. They're being mischievous. That means they're okay. We know that nobody's hurt, nobody's lost. They are just being mischievous and irresponsible, and they have no idea how dangerous what they're doing is. But at least they're all right there and they're having a good time. So we run directly into the woods to catch up to them, to basically emerge into their group and be like, hey, you guys are caught, let's go back now. But the second we get into those woods, we realize that there is something wrong. We thought that once they saw us, they would realize that they were in trouble and stop running and be like, oh, we're caught. Not that they were terrified of us, but we definitely had a level of authority. Like I said, they listened well, they respected us. We were trying to make them have the best summer ever, and they loved us for it. So if we said no, they said yes, sir. But when we got into those woods and we caught up to them, it was as if all of these kids didn't care that we were there. And they were running circles around us like a little swarm of bees, completely ignoring our existence. And they're playing tag with one another. They're in their own world, laughing hysterically, running by us in every direction in the middle of the night. And as we're trying to get their attention and being completely ignored, I realized that this is the wildest, most aggressive game of tag that I've ever witnessed, especially with these boys. So we start trying to speak up. We start yelling at these kids like, what are you guys doing out? Like, we're trying to scold them, trying to get their attention with like a little bit of bass and aggression in our voice. These kids just keep playing. They're laughing hysterically, chasing each other down and tagging each other. As they're running by me, I'm getting quick glimpses at their faces. Their eyes are wide open and they're weirdly illuminated by the moonlight, and they're a little bit glazed over as if these kids are overtired and just riding off a sugar rush or something. And they're laughing and doing like the little kid shrieks as they're almost getting tagged, and the smiles on their faces are so big, like this is the best game of tag that they've ever played. And Danny and I find ourselves with our backs towards each other so we could see all around us, with these kids just circling us, using us as like a little block in between the person that's it. And we don't really have any idea what to do about it. We're shouting at them, they're not listening. Then I notice something very odd. The kid that's it is chasing down another kid right in front of me. And when he tags him, it's not like a regular tag. Like, he gets to this kid and he like double hand slaps his back and pushes him to the ground as they're running full speed. And the kid that got tagged like skids his face on the ground. He smashed into the dirt, skid his face. The one kid yells, "You're it," runs off laughing hysterically. And I'm thinking, okay, that's gonna end this game. This kid's about to start crying because he just got double hand slapped and hit his face on the ground. But it's like he had no reaction to it. The game kept going. It was the most aggressive tag I'd ever seen these kids do. This kid gets right up, starts chasing after another kid, basically 5-stars him on the back as hard as he can, yells, "You're it," and they're still going. This wildly aggressive, loud game of tag. And me and Danny are looking at each other, not knowing what to do, because we're not actually supposed to like get physical with these kids. Like, we're not allowed to physically punish them. We could verbally scare them like, hey, you're gonna be in trouble, I'm gonna tell your parents, don't do that, scold them like an adult, but there isn't much we could do beyond that. But we're out in the woods in the middle of the night, and none of them are listening to us or respecting us, and we think we make a calculated decision that their parents would be totally okay with us grabbing a firm wrist grab in this situation. We would never hurt these kids, but it is dangerous to be out here, and the game that they're playing is ridiculously aggressive and dangerous, so we need to wrangle them. So one of them runs by me and I snag a wrist, and I squeeze it pretty hard because I'm pretty frustrated with this whole situation in general. So I'm trying to get some control with this. And this kid that I grabbed is usually the nicest in the group, the kindest and the most respectful. So when I grab his wrist, I think he's gonna snap out of it and he's gonna look at me, it's gonna hurt a little bit, the grip, and he's gonna be like, okay, I'm sorry. But it's not like that at all. I pull him towards me and I'm like, what are you doing? And this kid slaps me in the middle of the face and like scratches my face a little bit to get away from me. And I'm taken so off guard by it, I grab his other wrist so he can't hit me anymore, and he seems so angry at me. And at the same time, from the corner of my eye, I see Danny grab another kid. He has double wrist control, and his kid is sending kicks into his shin, trying to fight Danny off to continue playing. These kids were acting completely manic. Our lovely little group of kind-hearted kids were acting out like we had never seen before. So we have 2 of these little goblins restrained, and the rest of them kind of start slowing down and congregating in front of us. And we're basically yelling at these kids at this point because they're being horrible. And what they're doing is super dangerous. It's going to get them in trouble. It's probably going to get them sent home. And we're just trying to save their summer. And they all start to seem to be calming down. They're making a group right in front of us as if, like, okay, we're finally listening. But they still have that wide-eyed look on their face. And they all seem to be kind of nudging each other and like little giggles here and there, Like they're all in on the same inside joke. So we put the 2 kids that we have restrained into the group and we start doing a head count, and the head count is too short. So we start freaking out and we're asking these kids, where did these other 2 go? Did they run off deeper into the woods? We're trying to get answers from them. And all of these kids are looking at us with this same manic blank stare, like all they want to do is keep playing. And 2 of them step out of the group. They step forward as if they have something to say. And they walk directly up to Danny and I. And all they say is, "You're it." And they both give us a hard push, like right in our abdominal. And they make us take 1 step back as they're kind of knocking the wind out of us randomly. And as I'm trying to take my step back to regain my balance from this random push, my heel hits something behind me. And before you know it, both my feet are in the air, my back and the back of my head are hitting the ground behind me. The wind's knocked out of me, and I don't really realize what happened. When I hit my head on the floor, I got like a flash of white. And as I started to regain my eyesight and looking around, looking at Danny, looking at the group of kids, I realized what had happened. The 2 missing kids had snuck up behind us and went on their hands and knees to tabletop us. It was a planned attack, and they all started swarming and sprinting in circles again as if me and Danny were it, and we were about to start participating in their tag game. I had to pretend that I wasn't in pain with the wind knocked out of me. I got to my feet and I was getting ready to start yelling at these kids, grabbing wrists left and right and dragging them back to the cabin. I had no idea what to do other than that in this situation. It didn't seem like Danny had any better ideas either. And then I heard a very familiar sound followed by a very familiar feeling. I heard what sounded like aggressive, heavy footsteps coming in our direction, followed by what felt like getting sprayed with BB gun pellets on the back of my head, my back, my hamstrings, my calves. It felt like somebody whipped a handful of pellets at me. I felt a stinging sensation everywhere, and then I saw a bunch of small rocks rolling on the ground in front of me as if they all had just landed as well. And then I heard this horrible, gruntish roar, which was followed by some type of whooping. And I couldn't tell what direction it was coming from initially, but then it clicked in my head. It's probably coming from the same direction that I just got hit by these rocks. So I turn all the way around and I'm looking through these dark trees, and in the distance, I see some of these tree trunks kind of getting rattled as if something is running through them and ramming into them on its way towards us. The only positive thing about this situation was that it got the kids' attention too, and they had all stopped running and they were looking in the same direction. And finally, this thing gets close enough, lets out another gruntish roar, and all of these kids start panicking and freaking out, and they start sprinting back towards the cabin. They are terrified of whatever that thing is. And Danny and I stood our ground because we have to be in between whatever that thing is and the kids. We both take out our bear spray, which we always have on hand, and we're waiting for a bear to emerge and start charging us. But what entered our line of sight in this small illuminated area of the woods was that same figure, that large, thick, masculine figure standing on 2 feet. I couldn't see much of it, but I could definitely see more of it than I saw last time 9 years ago. And I could see it breathing heavily from its chest and its abdominal area, and I could see it was holding its arms out wide with its legs kind of wide, trying to make itself larger to intimidate us. And I could clearly see that it had this brown hue to it, but it wasn't what I thought it was. I was expecting some ape-like creature, like, damn, this is our second run-in with Bigfoot. This interdimensional Bigfoot is going to be standing here again. But this was a massive man, covered head to toe with brown leather. I'm talking, it looked like homemade leather shoes, pants, long sleeve shirt, gloves, mask, covers his neck and hair. He was covered head to toe with leather. That was so much worse than a Bigfoot. And now I was as scared as the kids. Danny didn't hesitate either. And we're basically racing back to the cabin. I'm thinking about maybe kicking his foot out just in case this guy's chasing us and I don't get caught. Didn't do it. We get back to the cabin and we all lock ourselves in with these kids. And we lock the door behind us. We open the shades so we could see out there. And we finally get to count the heads. All the kids are in here. They're all crying hysterically. They're hiding under the covers. They're apologizing to us like we have our kids back. Those kind-hearted kids are here with us again. But it was clear to me in that moment that they weren't really aware of what they were doing, because they were talking to us like their regular selves, as if they weren't just acting out horribly in the woods, and they're crying and confessing to us they saw a Bigfoot in the woods and they were so scared. It was a completely different dynamic than we just experienced in the woods with them. But once I knew that everybody else was in the cabin safe, I looked at Danny and I could see on his face that he wasn't as worried as everybody else, because what I saw freaked me out. So I pulled him off to the side and I was like, what was that out there? Because you're not acting scared enough. And he looked at me dead serious and he said, let the kids be scared of him. He's the only one that could snap them out of it. We call him Mr. Leather. He's kind of the protector around here. We're actually really lucky that it was him and not the buck. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys have been enjoying it. I hope you guys have been enjoying the weekly upload schedule. We're trying our absolute best to get you guys a video every week, and we deeply appreciate all of your support every Thursday. It's been so much fun. If this is your first time seeing this outro, please join us on the lives Thursday nights before we premiere the new video. We give away a ton of merchandise. We have a ton of fun. If you've ever wanted to reach out to me or ask me any questions, we go live for like an hour and a half. So please hit the notification bell, hit the subscribe button. Usually we go live at 7 p.m. Pacific time. And also, if you're new to the channel, please binge the entire channel. This channel wasn't built on current events. This channel was built for you to start at the oldest video and binge your way to the newest video, like a Netflix series. So let me know when you start your binge and let me know when you finish your binge. We appreciate your support. Please like the video, please subscribe to the channel. And if you guys like to watch on Spotify, we're on Spotify as well. American Hex on Spotify. We'll see you next week. And if you like this video, I would like to personally recommend this video next.